So far, for building our own campaign setting, we've talked about the creation of the world, the gods and pantheon involved in it, the factions and organizations that fill it, and now for mechanics. Mechanics is sort of a broad term, but what I mean is that the sort of type of game that and setting that this is, and how things are kind of functioning within that setting. Not all settings will differ mechanically that much from other settings, but it's still an important element to think about. Now, like, first off is the realism of your game. Like, what is important about the tone that you're setting in your campaign, because the players should all be on board with it, right? Because if you're running a horror session, this is not just for campaigns, this is for running anything in general. For running like a horror campaign, the player should know that they're that they're involved in it, that they should be prepared to potentially have this gritty realism. If they make a character expecting to be in this sort of typical hero story, and then just have that ripped to shreds as their characters go through trauma, that's not going to be what they're on board with. So just that's something to clarify. Based on the setting, it might be more geared to a certain type of that, like how Ravenloft is more geared to that horror type, or you have kind of the noir and steampunky kind of elements of Eberron, and things like that. Tone and mechanics often go hand in hand. If you're running like a gritty realism and your setting is a lot darker than how the mechanics normally go along with it, like maybe use the long rests take 7 days mechanic, short rests are 8 hours, or maybe there's consequences to taking damage, like you could break bones, like you can even do durability on weapons, crazy things like that. All these things are something your players should know if it's this type of campaign. Availability of magic is a big thing in Worlds. That all sorts of campaigns, I guess, have a different level of magic. Ravenloft is a lot rarer. It's not like you're going to be able to, just go into a town and it's going to have a magic item shop. So that's something to think about, right? How if when your players walk into a city, what do they expect if it's a sorcerer? That has implications in itself. Because if they're rare, or like a cleric's rare, it's like, oh, we need your healing capabilities, or things like resurrection are going to be almost impossible. So like things that aren't normally considered, because of the world is lacking in like high fantasy magic stuff. How people live in the world is not going to account for, like, oh, I can just use Goodberry to feed everyone. They're not going to have that. And if you have a druid that can do that, it's going to have a huge impact, and that could have a great advantage over the other cities. You could even have like superstitious magic, where if someone uses it, they could get burned at the stake, like, or even like places that ban magic. Like I did a setting Athkatla. That was, I think it's actually a city in the Forgotten Realms that I used. Basically, magic is banned there, which is really fun to implement, because my players had to think of creative ways they could get around problems having that restriction. Also, where does your magic come from? In my setting, the magic is a gift from the gods. So, like, even a mage might do a prayer to the god of magic and studying and things like that, because that's how they get their powers. It's just kind of a natural thing that comes along with magic, is this sort of idea of worship. And then, to another setting where magic may be a sort of dark source, where maybe you're drawing on corruption or curses to get your magic, or things like that. I've seen things where, like, wild magic and having to roll like percentage is a frequent part of using magic, like it's chaotic. That's definitely something you want to tell your players. Or even if it's different, like you're using like spell points instead. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do with magic that can make the world very unique. Level of technology, very important. It could take place in you can go anywhere with this, really. It could take place in like a cyberpunk setting where magic and technology have magic and technology are almost one of the same. Technologies catch up to magic. We have like laser pistols and hover bikes, and magic is just sort of an extension of this. It could be a modern world where the characters go to high school and have magic superpowers. It could be like the Dark Ages where people have no idea how medicine works. All of this level of technology will affect how the world is, how the culture is, how people interact in that world. Also, like how you personally run things. Like if your campaign is very down to earth, where you have all the trade routes and logistics of the world mapped out. It's not necessarily dependent on the campaign you're running, but or you can make it even lacking as grounded. Like absurd, like Alice in Wonderland setting where you can change size by eating mushrooms, and caterpillars are the size of people, and people paint colors onto roses. Like the world's your oyster is the point I'm trying to hammer in here. Like you don't always think to change things when you're doing like, oh, I'm just gonna have magic, and like it's fine. Like your setting doesn't have to be crazy different. It can just have different history and world. That's fine. But like if you're gonna take the time and effort to make your whole system, it's okay to there's definitely things to think about with your world. Like where does magic come from? How much of there is like these are questions that do have an impact and should definitely be considered. Like maybe for example, there's no other planes. There's just the material planes, and that's maybe you don't have like hell and demons and things like that. So if demons don't exist in your world, how does detect good and evil work? Like if magic is technology, is magic detect technology? These are questions you should ask yourself because it will inevitably come up in your game. Spells might have to work differently in your campaign, and that's fine. You may even ban certain spells, like in one Ravenloft game I played, we banned Remove Curse because it just got rid of so many problems in the game, basically. Races, what races are common, which are uncommon. Some might not even exist. That's important. Yuan-ti can be evil cultists like Forgotten Realms, but they don't have to be. In one of Matthew Colville's settings, the Dragonborns were actually created like Warforged rather than naturally made. So like you have very interesting applications to that, maybe even seen as weapons rather than people. In my setting, goblins are a lot more like gnomes. They're prided for their brains. Again, if there's racism towards a particular race, the player should probably know about that so they know what they're signing up for. Again, like it's always kind of tricky when you get into that. I don't think there's an issue with bringing up those questions. Some people just play it for escapism, right? But like you're allowed to do interesting things like with the idea of discrimination in this unique setting, like what that means. Like it allows people to fight that in a way they actually can, like they have power. But that's something for a different video. Mechanics probably go deeper than that. There's a lot to discuss. I hope that sort of list gave you an idea of potential ways that mechanics do have an impact, or how you can change and use it in your game. But other than that, thank you for watching. I hope this helped you make your campaign setting, or if not, at least understand campaign setting if that's not something you're making, or maybe just help you in your next game. Regardless, thank you. This is Dodeca Dungeon, signing off.